Welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast where we talk marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. Purpose number two, Brad, to spotlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. With that, we have a very special guest, Brad Hreha. Brad's real estate career got started with wholesaling single-family homes by using strategic marketing strategies to find off-market deals. Brad would find deals for his investors and negotiate a price with the seller. Once the deal was under contract, Brad would present the deal to his investors. Brad gained valuable experience with motivated sellers, negotiations, real estate contracts, rehab calls, running comparable sales, learning the market in different ways to structure deals for investors to maximize returns. Brad now works with a group of high net worth individuals who invest in multifamily properties. Brad also hosts a monthly meetup group for real estate investors in South Jersey called South Jersey Multifamily Passive Investors. For the last 10 years, Brad has also been running a successful window tinting company. Brad experienced the challenge of building the business from the ground up. Brad has learned many useful skills such as clear communication, time management, and problem solving, as well as how to operate, grow, and run a business. Brad invests in value-add Class A and B multifamily properties with 30 to 200 units in emerging markets. Brad, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you for having me, Jerome.
Absolutely. Brad, so I just read your bio. It's a lot in that bio. And I've been paying attention to your social media stuff because I've been getting excited and ready for us to have this interview. So, Brad, tell us your story, how you went from like the wholesaling and the window tinting business to how you got into multifamily.
Sure. So I started my first business back in 2011. I had done everything under the sun before that, right? Landscaping, construction, I repossessed cars. Most of them I never had at a job, but I wanted to do my own thing. So most people don't know this, but I literally bought a roll of window film, some tools, and rented a shop and just went at it, having never tinted a car in my life. I just know that I'm the type of person that puts my back against the wall. I'm going to figure it out. So I got into business and, I started having success in the business, but it really wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was hard to find people. It was hard to keep people to do good work. You're around cars that do a lot of things can go wrong. So in 2017, I had my best year ever in my window tinting business, and it just wasn't what I wanted. I was working 60, 70 hours a week. It was not uncommon for me to be in my shop at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. And I slept all day Sunday because I was just exhausted. I had two little girls. I was missing their entire lives as they were starting to grow up, and there just had to be something better for me. So always had an interest in real estate. I used to remember, looking at apartment complexes, just thinking, man, how do you get so rich you buy that thing? Didn't understand it. So, started reading books because I didn't know where else to go. And, books led me to podcasts. Podcasts led me to my first real estate coach that I hired, which taught me how to wholesale properties. I did that for a year. Well, I did, 4 deals that year. I ended up, I think, making like 70 grand on those 4 deals. But I really just replaced my business with another business that I was spending 60, 70 hours a week doing, which is not what I wanted. I also saw some issues within the business that I didn't want to, continue with. There's a lot of people out there that, will take advantage of distressed sellers and just lock up a contract and try to negotiate it after 60, 90 days. And when that person's in a worse position than they were. So I just didn't want to go through dealing with all that. So I walked away from real estate for almost a year. And then somebody posted a book on Facebook, one of my friends. It's the best ever apartment syndication book by Joe Fairless. I don't recommend reading it unless you're really going to get into this business. It's over 400 pages. I just knew this is what I always wanted to do. So I read the book, and if I was a cartoon character, man, that light bulb would have been right above my head, right? That was the moment I knew what I was going to do. So went out and started joining Facebook groups, and I joined one Facebook group, and 5 minutes after joining, I got a message from the guy who ran it, and he just said, who he was, and he asked me about who I was and what I'm looking to do. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Nobody ever actually, tries to care about people. So friend requested him on Facebook. He ended up putting this post up about how he's doing this 30-day challenge, get into your first multifamily property. And I reached out to him and asked him if I could be a part of it. He said he already had his 10 people, but to give him a call. We talked for a little while. He ended up inviting me into the group, so it made me the 11th person. We started in the group. 10 days after that, COVID hits. So like we had some traction getting going. Then all of a sudden, the world's trying to shut down. And I had hired coaches before. I realized the value that he was giving me after 30 days. So I'd reach out to him. I said, listen, I'd like to, pay you to continue to be my coach. And he kind of blew me off, which was really weird at the time. But he said, like, give me a couple of weeks and we'll talk. I said, okay. So a couple of weeks go by, he decides to do another 30-day challenge because COVID happened in the middle of it. So he wants to redo the thing, try to do people in. I just continued to do everything he told me to do. And I was the one bringing the deals to the group. We were looking at underwriting, we were meeting with brokers. Like, I just did everything, right? I was there every single day. So year goes by, I was awarded my very first deal, which was a mixed-use 66-unit Class A building in Greensboro, North Carolina. 57 apartments with 9 retail spaces. We brought in a partner who claimed he could raise all the money. And when he couldn't even come up with a $300,000 EMD deposit that we needed, we were kicking the PSA back and forth with the seller. He finally got tired of it and pulled the deal from us. So that was my first experience with multifamily, was getting a deal pulled from me. My partner ended up coming to me. My coach turned into my business partner after that. We went to buy 158 units, which is 2 properties out in Wichita, Kansas. Never thought I'd ever step foot in Kansas, but we ended up finding deals out there that made sense. So now I'm a co-GP on 158 units in Wichita, Kansas with my business partners, and we've raised a little over $7 million for those deals from outside investors.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So you threw out some jargon with us. What's a co-GP? Tell us what that means. And I know there are some other abbreviations that typically go into what that is. So can you help us understand those philosophies? Co-GP, limited partner, all that stuff. Like, what is a co-GP?
Sure. So what I did on these 2 properties was called a syndication. It's a 70-30 split between the general partnership and the limited partnership. So 30% goes to the general partnership GP, which is the active owners of the business, and 70% of that goes to the passive investors in the business. They're the ones who put their money in.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So when you were telling your story, a couple of things jumped out to me, and I want to go deeper on those things. So the first thing that jumped out was like your first coach. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because I think a lot of people try to make it in anything and they don't understand the value of coaching. And you said it, you were like, I paid the coach and I just did everything I was supposed to do. And I kind of had that similar experience. I was like, you know what? I paid the coach and I did everything he told me to do, even though I disagreed with some of the stuff that he did. It helped me hit success. And then later I was like, you know what? Here's something I would do to improve on what he was teaching me. So help us understand your mindset on like finding and paying for a coach. Take us through that process.
Sure. So, I've hired many coaches at this point. So I've had some good ones. I've had some bad ones. I would recommend for anybody to find a coach that isn't that much further ahead of where you currently are. So you can go out and find, a coach that's $100,000 and they own, $1 billion worth of real estate. Those coaches don't really understand the new beginner investor problems, right? They're so far removed from that stage. So, find somebody that is above you where you want to get to, but not so far to where there's a disconnect. The best coaches that I've had are actually been the ones who've started new programs. I've gotten a lot of one-on-one attention, even when there wasn't supposed to be, because I came in at the right time. They were able to help me, and they recognized that I was willing to do whatever they told me to do. So, when a good coach sees that you're doing what they're telling you to do, they're going to pour into you.
Okay. So you are now a coach, and like this podcast is about, we bring value, but we also like to offer the services. So you are a coach, you do some coaching now yourself. Can you tell us about that, how your program works and some of the stuff that you're working on?
Sure. So if you'd asked me about coaching 2 years ago, I would have swore up and down I would never get involved. But I had somebody come to me and they wanted me to coach them, and I ended up agreeing to it. It was one of the best experiences that I've had so far in my professional life. Watching him basically go from me speaking Chinese to him to, him underwriting deals, picking out his markets, going out to Des Moines, Iowa, and meeting with the brokers that he's talking to, watching him grow. I mean, that was such a phenomenal experience. And I within that period of time, I started meeting a lot of people that have spent 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on coaching. And they're coming to me asking me questions. And I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you pay for this or for another program? Well, they gave me a bunch of videos and they kind of wished me luck. Like that's not really what a coaching program should be. I mean, you can find that information for free anywhere, right? But the coaching aspect of it, there has to be some hand holding to it. They need to be able to share their experiences with you and guide you so that you don't make the same mistakes that they did. Like it's supposed to speed the process up. If it would take you 3 years to figure it out on your own, I want to make sure that maybe they can get there in 6 months. Like learn from me, use my experiences so that you don't have to go through all the hardships that I already went through.
Absolutely, 100%. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the benefits of coaching is not you don't just receive coaching, but you also get like leverage of that person's network, their experience, their the things that they've done. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because in my personal experience, like I had a similar journey to you. I started off, I was like, oh, I'm gonna wholesale. Then I was like, you know what? It's a lot here. It's a lot of things moving. Like, how can I go bigger? Then I was like, oh, guess what? I'm gonna do apartments and multifamily. Then when I got there, and I want you to talk about this later too, I was going to the networking events and I was networking with people and I was like, this is not the right environment. So I changed things back. So can you tell us, I forget what question that I was trying to ask you. Do you remember?
Just about in terms of the value I bring with my connections.
Yeah, right. So leveraging people's network and their connections. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's not just about the coaching. And I don't think people understand and see that when they pay for coaching. It's about the experience, your network, your connections. You might have relationships with, I know a lot of the multifamily is like, you have to have strong connections with brokers and other, real estate and lists. So could you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, I've built hundreds of relationships with brokers all throughout the country. I know exactly how to pick up the phone and call a broker with zero experience and get them to know that I know what I'm doing and give me an opportunity because I've done it, right? And that's what I relay to my students. The lenders, who do you need to go to for lending? Like who do you need to talk to? What do you need to look for? Where are you going to find your investors? How do you create your avatar, your ideal investor, so that you know the exact people you want to go target to raise capital from? Where do you find your attorney? Where do you find your SEC attorney? Like these are all things that I've already done. How do you find the right property management company? Where do you even get the information from? What are the questions that you're going to ask those property management companies? I've done all this at a high level. We have 158 units. I've looked in several markets. I mean, you can tell me a state right now, I can pick out a property management company that covers that area because I've already been through the process and vetted them. So there's not a piece to this to where you can come to me and say, hey, I don't have this connection. I already have the connection and I can give it to you. And that's what a good coach and mentor would do.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So now this is where I was like, I want you to talk about this earlier because this is where I experienced, right? We're talking about avatar. And in my experience, I didn't know what an avatar was at the time, but I was going to these networking events. I'm going to meet other multifamily real estate investors at these events. And it's like, I'm looking for the same thing as you. So can you talk about avatar and can you talk about, you made a really good Facebook post where you talked about like, we shouldn't be going to these events. That's like the wrong idea. It's the wrong concept. Everybody's here looking for the same stuff. So I'd like to hear you talk about that in a little more detail.
Sure. So your avatar is not the movie. It's your ideal investor. I always get people to say that the movie. No, it's your ideal investor. How specific can you get about who your ideal investor is? So if you're a doctor, you may want to target other doctors because you're looking to raise money from doctors. You understand what their time constraints are. You understand what the problems that they run into are. Like you can speak to them, their jargon about what they're going through. That's your ideal investor. So for me, I realized that my ideal investor, because I spent some time at a financial institution, I target financial advisors and money managers because I understand their process, how they look at things, what they're looking for. So I can talk to them on their level. I can talk about how, they're saving for retirement and you have all these buckets you're putting money into. Well, let's keep doing what you're doing, but let's add another bucket to where we can put investment money in. And I can talk to them on their level. So I've realized that my ideal investor is that type of person. Now, the more you can anticipate about your investor or avatar, the better you'll be. So I know what kind of questions they're going to ask me. I know what kind of concerns they're going to ask me. So being prepared to have the responses to that when you're talking to them just shows that you know what you're doing. You can relate to them, and it's an easier conversation. I can't go to a brain surgeon and say, "Hey, listen, I'm a multifamily investor. I want you to invest with me." I have no idea about what goes on in that guy's daily life to even communicate with him about how I can help. But a financial advisor or money manager person, I understand what they do on a day-to-day basis. I understand how they talk to their clients, so I can have that conversation at a high level with them.
Thank you. So that handles the avatar. Now I want you to talk about how a lot of us have it wrong, right? I'm excited. I want to do multifamily investing, and then I go all to a bunch of real estate meetups, and tell me like why that's the wrong mentality and how I should adjust the mentality and go to like where should I be going to network and meet like these other people that could potentially invest in my deals.
Sure. So in the beginning, I was told, go to meetups, talk to people, tell anyone who breathes what you do. Maybe that's great in the beginning to kind of get your confidence up, talk to people. But when you go to a real estate event, you have other real estate investors there who are all looking for the same thing. They're looking for people to lend them money, or they're looking to raise money. They all have the same goal. So I actually went to my first multifamily event after I bought my first property. And, there's just 800 people there, and they're all trying to pitch me their deal while I'm trying to pitch their deal. It was just such a massive waste of time, right? So I went through all that, and that's why I always tell people, like, listen, it's great to meet people. You have great conversations, but ultimately you're looking for a needle in a haystack at either real estate events, multifamily events, or general networking places, right? Like, you have to talk to so many people and spend so much time to maybe just find one investor. I teach my students how to go right on LinkedIn, use their avatar, search for those people, start a conversation, how to pitch them the call. I have the whole script for how to go through the call, and then how to set up the second call to get soft commitments. I've gone through this. I do this, all the time. So I know what's worked and what doesn't work. And I'll tell you what, you're not going to find your investors at other real estate events.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So you just talked about that awesome program that you have. How can we learn more about that program so we can not make the same mistakes that I made and that one mistake that you made by going to target other real estate investors? How can we get access to what you have?
In terms of the LinkedIn or the full program?
Your full program. Yeah. How would we learn more about that?
I mean, you can go to my website, bradhreha.com. I have my book available on Amazon. I have it right here. I got to get you your copy. But you can even just reach out to me. I mean, I'm all over social media. I talk to people in DMs all the time. My phone number is 609-778-8468. You can just text me if you want. I got no problem. I'm pretty easy to get in contact with.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So you just held up that book. I'm like really big on books, and not just the ebooks, but making it like physical. So can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. So I had a problem. I came to Mr. Implementation, and he took my book and helped me put it into a physical copy, which is so much better now than it was. I mean, the response that I'm getting from having this actual physical copy is night and day over just having that ebook.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us what your book is about. I went through some of it when we were working on it, and you got some step-by-step stuff in there. We added some action items, and it's a really healthy book on getting people like to take action. That's one thing I really appreciated when I was going through the book. It's like, look, this is not theory, take action. One of the things that really jumped out is like when you first start reading, you're like, stop everything. Send me an email right now, because it's not about what you know, it's about what you do. So can you talk about that and talk about your book?
Absolutely. So I've read a ton of real estate books, multifamily books, and the hardest part is taking what the people are writing about and actually putting it into action. So when I thought of doing my third book now, I was like, how can I make this so simple and such an easy process that someone can read this and go, okay, I know what to do. So I literally took what I did step by step and wrote about it to the point where some of the scripts are in there, exactly what to say to people are in there. And I did that call to action in the beginning, because if you're going to read the book and you can't stop and just send me a simple email with one line in there that says what I want you to tell me, more than likely you're going to read that book, you're going to put it down, and you're never going to do anything. But it's all about taking action. And that's what I wanted the book to be about, was here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. And if you go through this and you're persistent, you'll actually be able to do it.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So, since we're on the topic of books, I heard you mention Joe Fairless' book. You said it's like 400 pages, and I'm going to go off on a tangent too, because I always get people, they say, "Oh, nobody wants to read this, nobody wants to do that," and I just want people to know. We just had Brad here. He said, "I read that book. It was 400 pages." So people read things when they're interested.
So here's my copy of it. I mean, it's hard to tell, but I don't like to mess books up. This thing's pretty in bad shape because I've probably read it 5 or 6 times at this point. But yes, you're correct. If somebody is really interested in doing something, they'll read it. I read it. I've read it multiple times now, and I still continue to read it.
Thanks for sharing that. So what are 3 books that you recommend for someone that's getting started or trying to learn multifamily or business? Like, what are just 3 books that you recommend to the people and why?
3 books for business. Ooh, I mean, I always like to start with a mindset book. This really doesn't have anything to do with business, but Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, my all-time favorite book. I always recommend that to all my new students to read that, to just get you in the mindset of, being able to be in business and using the words that you should tell yourself. Because the way you word things to yourself determines how you look at things.
Got it right here.
Yep. There you go. That's my favorite book of all time. I actually met Sharon Lechter.
Nice.
I would say, let me look here. It's right behind me. I know it is. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's all about being consistent and doing things over and over and over again, because that's the only way you achieve success in this world. And if you're going to read a book on multifamily, and it's not my book, I would recommend Crushing It. Is it Crushing It? I can't remember the name of it. It's Crushing It in Apartments or something like that. It's not as in the weeds as Joe Fairless's book, but it's a little bit more digestible for people.
Okay. And then you mentioned Joe Fairless. You have that there. You like, I've read it like 5 times. I've been through his book several times. Can you share your insights and your perspective on that book? And maybe like talk about like when someone should read that book, like at what part of the journey should they start and read that book?
I think once you have a good understanding of this is something you want to do, I would say then read the book. So start on some other things, make sure multifamily is something you want to do. And then if it is, then I would start reading that book, only because I've recommended it to people that have interest in multifamily. They get in 100 pages and they go, "Oh, well, this is not for me." Because they just most people have this theory that, oh, multifamily is easy. I can just buy a property. It sits there, it cash flows, and I don't have to worry about it. It's not that simple. Everything's work, right? If it was that easy, everyone would do it. But I think once you have a good grasp on the business and that you really want to do it, I would say definitely read it at that point.
Excellent. Brad, could you share with us one of your favorite case studies of one of your students?
So, I mean, I would say that the guy that I worked one-on-one with for the year, like I said, I was speaking Chinese to him in the beginning. He evaluated his markets. He decided that Des Moines, Iowa was going to be a market and Jacksonville, Florida was going to be one of his markets. And he goes out to Des Moines, Iowa a couple times a year. He talks with his brokers. He has his team built out there, property management, other partners that are, underwriting deals, people who are raising capital. So to watch him go from, like I said, like not knowing anything to setting up his business and, continuously trying to work and find deals. It's been the best thing, because ultimately the business is hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for anybody, but he's still out there and he's looking for his deals and he continues to work at the business. And it's great for me to watch him can just continue to try to better himself.
I think that's why I like you, because you keep it straight. Like, we're like 2 straightforward people. Look, it's not easy. I don't know what people are out there telling you, but it's not easy. You got to do some work, and people don't like to hear that. So it rubs people the wrong way sometimes, but that's just the reality. And that's one of the most loving things you can do, is tell people straight, like, this is how it works. You can jump in if you want or not. So Brad, I've been paying, probably in the past, I paid attention to some of you, like going to negotiate some deals or to get some deals under contract. And we know that they don't always work out. So can you share some of your experience when you've been working on some deals and things that work out? Take us through some of those processes, that journey, that mindset, and maybe give some people some inspiration on, how to get through that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the first deal that got involved with didn't work out. And that was more because of, a partner that I had. So, I would always tell people, make sure you vet your partners very well.
Mhm.
Um, we had another property that we pushed really hard to get a LOI signed. LOI is a letter of intent, just basically says that we're gonna, negotiate in good faith. It's not a purchase and sale agreement, right? So we pushed really hard on a property we really wanted. We got an LOI signed by the owner, and 4 days later, we get a call from the broker that says we got a higher offer that came in over the weekend, so the seller's going to back out. Well, the letter is just saying good faith, like they decided to pull it on us. There's really nothing we could have done. So things happen, but it's really just about, okay, cool, it happened. Like, what can we take from this? What can we learn from it and apply it to the next situation and move on? Because at the end of the day, this is real estate. Not everything goes through. Not everything's unicorns and rainbows. Like, take what you learned, move on, apply it to your next deal, and just continue to keep educating yourself and growing.
All right. And tell us about your favorite or your most successful transaction, one of your most, and it doesn't have to be even a closed transaction. Just take us through what your best experiences and getting a deal to close or working out a deal or getting something under contract.
I mean, I would say that my favorite transaction so far was, my first multifamily deal. I had a very specific deal in mind. I wanted 100 units for my very first deal. I didn't get it, but I did end up with a 70-unit Class A building. So the fact that it was Class A was kind of like the cherry on top for me. But that was an awesome deal. Most people say that deal's going to die on LoopNet. That's where I found the deal. Yes, more eyeballs are on them, but you just have to dig a little bit harder and really look at the deal and see what was, how you can make the deal work. Like, they were giving away, they're barely charging for their covered parking. The owner was paying $25,000 a year to give his tenants free cable and internet. And so we were able to come in, make some changes, put that cost back on the tenants, which rightfully it should be. We were able to add values in different ways that nobody else saw. So ultimately we were able to win that property and move forward on it.
All right. And so one of the things, I have to break this up into two sections. Your bio talked about Class A, B. So tell us what classes are. What does that mean in regards to multifamily real estate? What's a class? How many there are? Tell us about that.
Sure. So your Class A is typically your brand new build with all the amenities, your nice brand new properties. You can have a Class A building that's older if it's in a Class A area. So it really just depends on, the age of the property and where it's built. Your Class B is generally a little bit older. So, I mean, at this point in time, probably, 2015 or 2010, depending on who you ask, or a little bit older, maybe 20 years after that is your Class B property, a B class area, a little bit less of amenities than your A class. And then your C class is, your workforce housing. It's, there's doors, but there's no pool, there's no playground. It's just apartment units, nothing fancy. Like I said, workforce housing. And then your D class is your ghettos, your areas that you don't really want to be in. You're worried about getting shot if you drive by. So
excellent. So in your bio, it said Brad invests in value add. Tell us what value add, what does that mean?
So value add was kind of what I was talking about with that 70-unit building. Any way that we can add value to the property to force its appreciation. So that could be just charging for pets, adding a $25 pet rent for the pets that increases our NOI. Maybe we want to do some light renovations and there's room to raise rents $150 or $200, whatever it may be. Anything that we can do to a property, charge for washer and dryer, pay for covered parking, valet trash, all those things are value add opportunities to where it increases the NOI of our property, which ultimately increases the value of our property.
Excellent. And one thing I appreciate about reading your bio is that last line, Brad invests in value add Class A and B multifamily properties with 30 to 200 units. How do you become so specific? How do you pick like a criteria in a market like that?
So part of this, when you get into this business, you have to learn how to evaluate a market to determine whether it's a good market to actually invest in and risk your investors' money. So, excuse me, the good example I always like to show, and it's in Joe Fairless's book, this is why it's perfect to use. if you were investing in Detroit when the whole auto industry went down, most people moved out of the market. So like you have properties, your vacancy goes up, your property values go down. You don't want that. You want stabilized market. So you evaluate your market. And then in order to sort through your deals, because if you just accept every deal that comes your way from a broker, you'll never have any time and you'll literally not be able to keep up. So in order to talk to a broker and let them convey to them that you know what you're doing, you set yourself an investment criteria. So like one of my investment criteria is I invest in Raleigh, North Carolina, MSA, in only garden styles apartments, which is 3 stories or lower. Anything above that, it's considered a high rise. Value add deal, class C or B, 30 to 200 units. So when a deal comes my way, I can look at it and go, that fits my criteria. I'm going to spend more time and look at it. If it doesn't, I'm going to tell the broker, hey, listen, this property doesn't fit my criteria because of X, Y, and Z, but I appreciate you sending it over to me. Keep me in the loop on the next one. It's just your way to sort through deals, or else, like I said, you'll be analyzing every deal that comes your way and you won't have any time.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So I would like to get us wrapped up. And one of the things that I like to do is because people like they like to go find and try to pick people's brain, and they like to do it for free. And I don't like that, right? So we're going to get some people out. They're going to watch the podcast and going to say, hey, I want to work with Brad. But I always like to tell people, you need to find a way to add value to people before you go picking their brain and asking them for a bunch of stuff. So the reason why I'm saying that is because I have a section, I call it the bonus section. And I ask how can someone add, in case they wanted to reach out to you, how can they add value to you, right? So the question is, how can someone add immediate value to you or your business? And an example for me, in my case, would be, hey, go buy my book, right? I'll know that's a small way to support me. Or, hey, go leave me a review on Google. It's a small way to support me versus just come in to take something from me. So, Brad, how can someone add immediate value to you or your business?
So, I mean, obviously, them buying my book, same thing, that would add value to me. Would love to just get that out there so people understand the process more and it's more digestible, more actionable. But if they don't want to do that and they have interest in getting in this business, the best way to add value to me would be to, one, reach out, ask me what my investment criteria is specifically, and then go find me that deal. That would be the best way if someone really wanted to get involved and do some legwork, because most people don't want to do the legwork, right? But if you were able to do that and you brought me that deal, I'd be happy to bring you in.
Excellent. Excellent. So the next question is very similar, but this time is long-term value. So how can someone add long-term value to you or your business?
Ooh, long-term value. I don't know that I can answer that one right now. Boy.
Yeah, I think you answered it. Just bring me a deal.
Yeah, I guess so.
The book is like the short term. You could do that like immediately. And then long-term value is like put in that work and bring me a deal I can look at that's probably going to bring me value long-term.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think you answered it. All right. Excellent. Brad, let's see. We talked about books. Let's see. I want to get us wrapped up. How can we learn more about you online?
I mean, I try to be as open and transparent as I possibly can. It's not, like I said, not all unicorns and rainbows. I am open about the bad things that have happened, the struggles that have happened. So, I mean, if they connect with me on Facebook, I mean, you see my post, man. I try to put it all out there. Like I don't try to sugarcoat anything. I'll tell you how it is. So, I think that'd be the best thing to do.
All right. Connect with Brad on Facebook. And Brad, you're working on a website, some courses, you're working on some stuff. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us where we can go once that's all complete.
Sure. So, it'll be my website, bradhreha.com. I'm building out a video course for, the students. And what I always try to tell people is the video course is there for just some guidance. If you want to sit down and you watch the videos, when you hire me as a coach, you're hiring me, you're getting me. Like that's the value people need to see. I give all of my students access to me on WhatsApp. So if they have a question in real time, they can send me a message. I'm not like other programs where you got to set up a call or, that may be a week out or something like that to try to get your questions answered. So, I try to be as one-on-one in a group setting as I possibly can.
All right. Thank you. And since we're talking about it, I meant to ask you this when you were talking, but again, tell us like a little bit of how, because you're a coach, but there are so many coaches out there and it's like, what coach do I pick? So you're like, make sure you pick a coach that can like essentially come down to your level. Like, don't pick somebody that's all the way up there and doesn't have time for you. So tell us a little bit about how that process again. And then, I know I already asked you, but tell us your website and how people can get access to that. So your coach.
So, I mean, you got to talk to whoever you're going to hire. And if you don't have access to them, I would say just move on, find someone else, because, at the end of the day, a lot of the programs, the biggest problem that I see is they hire people for positions, but they don't really know exactly what's going on because they've never done the business. They just were hired to explain a part of the business, and they only know concepts, not actual things that happen. So, look for someone who's actually in the business on a day-to-day, on the day-to-day, and have gone through the struggle. So, and again, the website's just my name, bradhreha.com. Again, LinkedIn, Facebook, those are other great ways to get a hold of me.
All right, Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot. You owe me a book. When can I get that signed copy of that book?
I got to order my second round. If you, I'll make a note of it right now to order those, and I'll get you as soon as it comes over. All
right, perfect. So, Brad, let's close this out. If you could close us down with one word, no explanation, what word would that be?
Consistency.
Consistency. All right, Brad, thank you so much. I appreciate you. This has been excellent. So I'm going to shut us down, and we're going to talk in the back room.
Thanks, Jerome. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Yeah, no problem.